So I'm here to help you fast track your progress by showing you exactly what to focus on during circle time and the mistakes to avoid, right? So if you want to skyrocket circle time success in your own classroom, then I encourage you to keep watching because in this training, I'm going to share my tried and true formula that they didn't teach you in college. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited that you are joining me tonight along with ESGI. It's my pleasure to bring you Skyrocket Circle Time Success. But I want to start with a question, right? So have you ever watched the conductor of a symphony during a performance? Like the conductor is on stage, right? And they're masterfully waving their arms and there's batons or whatever you call them, and the most amazing music you've ever heard is happening, and they make it look so easy, right? Yet if you were going to pick up those same wands, I should probably learn what they're really called. If you were going to pick those up and give it a whirl on your own, the results might not be quite what you expected, right? So here's the thing, when it comes to circle time, right? When it comes to circle time, you can either be an accomplished conductor who can capture the attention of children and read a story from start to finish and sing songs and play games and even teach skills. Or you can continue to feel like a failure while you play whack-a-mole as your students roll around on the floor, can you relate, and wander around the classroom. Do you hear me? Are you with me so far? You see, I know exactly what it's like to feel like a failure during circle time because I struggled with it in the very beginning of my career too. I spent over 20 years in the pre-K classroom honing my teaching skills until I perfected my circle time recipe to minimize distractions, disruptions, and those unwanted pesky behaviors. So is little Ella over in the Dramatic Play Center bouncing a baby doll on her hip instead of listening to the story that you're reading during circle time? Or maybe Liam is over there crawling on all fours, making delightful bodily function noises, true story, while you're trying to read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, right? So I'm here to help you fast track your progress by showing you exactly what to focus on during circle time and the mistakes to avoid, right? So if you want to skyrocket circle time success in your own classroom, then I encourage you to keep watching because in this training, I'm going to share my tried and true formula that they didn't teach you in college. So it's true. The transformation from feeling like a circle time imposter, right? Because a lot of us feel like that, to an accomplished conductor can seem like an impossible undertaking if you're going it all alone, right? But I'm confident that you can create a successful circle time routine, one that makes you feel confident that your little learners are engaged in learning if you follow the steps that I'm going to clearly lay out for you in this training. And when you stop trying to control children's behavior and you start channeling that behavior instead, your students will learn more and they'll be more engaged while they're doing it because they'll be having fun. Now, I'm going to say this name and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I'm going to do my best because that's what we do. Demetrius Zygalitis, I think that's how you say it. He's an anthropologist and a cognitive scientist at the University of Connecticut, and he says that humans' brains are designed to seek patterns. They're pattern seeking. And this helps us as humans make sense of the world around us. And when humans are not able to find patterns, we can experience stress, and our mind craves the regularity and routine. It craves this type of thing to fight off anxiety, right? So if you're really, if you can relate to this one, if you're a really organized person who likes things, nice and neat and in order, and then you experience a kind of a chaotic environment, right? It can cause you a lot of stress and anxiety. I remember when I was in college, I'm a very neat type of a person. I like to have everything in its place. That just helps me feel calm. And my roommate that they gave me the first year was the opposite. She was a throw your clothes on the floor and just figure it all out later kind of a person. And it caused me great stress, right? I'm sure you can relate. So this is why having a predictable routine in the classroom can give young children a sense of safety and control over their environment. And having that consistent routine is the cornerstone of creating a successful circle time. But what does a successful circle time look like? What's it include, right? So here's a very simple step-by-step process that you can go through each day. And step one is to place a simple picture schedule in your circle time area. And this will show students what comes next, right? Everything that you do. Now, this is a little teeny tiny sample that I'm holding in my hand here. And it's obviously just for the purpose of this session. This is way too small to use in your classroom. It's also way too short, because if those were the only 4 things you did in the day, boy, wouldn't it be great? But this is just a sample. And so you place your picture schedule, like on the screen, in your circle time area. And then on your schedule, you're going to put a clothespin, or you can use any type of a clip that you want. I like to use a clothespin just because they're super cheap, right? And we like to teach cheap. I'm using a teeny tiny clothespin because this is a little teeny tiny screen that I'm on in the corner. So you use a clothespin you clip it to the picture that's happening right now, right? So let's pretend you're in a high scope classroom and your kids come in every morning and they sign in, right? So I always have my clip already on that part of the day because the kids aren't there when it starts. They're kind of coming in the door. So this is where my clothespin always is. It's one of my routines at the end of the day to move it back up after the kids have gone, because if you move it back up while they're still in the classroom, they're going to say, but it's not that yet. So it starts up here, and then as you move to your circle time, or you might call it morning meeting or whatever your whole group time is, you sing a little chant or a song, right? And it could be any chant or song that you like. I love the one that I learned from Dr. Jean many years ago. I've used it every year with great success. It gets the kids' attention. It really helps them focus on what is happening right now. And it goes na 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 na, hey hey hey, circle time. And so they get, all their arms are moving, right? Their little hands and arms are moving. Their eyes are looking. Their ears are hearing the music, listening to it. And it helps them know that it's time to come to circle. Use whatever chant you like. And yes, I think we can all agree Dr. Jean is amazing. So thank you, Dr. Jean, for that. And then once they're all there, we're going to review the picture schedule together really quickly. All of this is very quick. It doesn't take long, but it really goes a long way. And so you might review the schedule and say, yes, right now we're in circle time. And after circle, we go to, and it depends on what time of the year, but if you've been in school for several weeks or more, they'll say centers. And I'm like, that's right, we're going to centers. And then after centers, where do we go? Recess, that's right. And if you're using a picture schedule and a pocket chart, if you have anything special happening that day that doesn't usually happen every day, you can turn over, like let's say you're going to skip centers because you've got picture day or some silly thing like that, and you can flip center time over and put the picture of picture day in there and say, remember, instead of going centers to centers today, we're going to go and have our pictures taken at this time, and then we'll go to recess. This is a little different, just to set them up for success, right? Because you don't want to spring it on them last minute and They already don't like change, right? Then after we review our picture schedule really briefly, then we're going to sing a welcome song. This kind of lets them know this is the official start of circle time. And so you can choose any welcome song that you like. I like to use ones that use the students' pictures along with the song. So it uses their names. So good morning to Jason, good morning to Melanie, you know, whoever in your class, but any kind of song that allows you to use their names, student names. It's going to be super helpful. And then we all look at the person whose name we just mentioned, and we can point to them or we can wave hi, something like that. That just kind of helps get everyone into the whole, this is the start of our day. This is how we start it, by welcoming everybody, smiling and waving. You're setting the tone for the day. And then, of course, as you go through your circle time, you're going to make sure that you balance your active and your passive activities during this time. So you never, of course, want to have them sitting for too long. So you're going to want to balance the times that they sit and listen and the times that they are actively participating. You're going to want to balance those out so that your circle time doesn't get too top heavy on one side or the other. And when you follow this predictable routine every single day, your circle time is going to go much more smoothly. All right, so now it's time to talk about those pesky attention spans, shall we? I think we can all agree that preschoolers, pre-K, kindergarten even, their attention span is short, right? So typically, children ages 3 to 5, they have short attention spans, especially when it comes to whole group activities like circle time, right? Teeny tiny itsy bitsy attention spans. And young children need to experience circle time in a very developmentally appropriate way that matches those teensy itsy bitsy attention spans. And we can stretch those short little attention spans and help them grow gradually throughout the course of the school year. And of course, as they mature, they start to increase as well. And you're going to have a lot more success with circle time if you keep in mind the length of your students' attention spans. And research points to, on the screen you can see, the average attention span for a young child is typically 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. And that's just typically. You're always going to have students that don't fall within that typical description. So some students will have shorter attention spans. Some students will have longer, right? But the average attention span for a 3-year-old is going to be 6 to 9 minutes, right? 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. For 4-year-olds, that goes up to 8 to 12 minutes. So what this is telling us is that at the beginning of your school year with your students, your circle time is going to be shorter, right? Because more of your students are closer to that age, right? So at 4 years old, for example, if they're coming into public pre-K, then they're going to be 4 on or before the first day of school in most cases. So therefore, you're going to want to keep that closer to the 8-minute mark. And then as the year goes on, you can increase it, going for your goal of 12 minutes. And then of course, when they're 5, they're ready for a lot more, and that number increases 10 to 15. And as they become accustomed to being in your classroom, they become accustomed to the routine, they become accustomed to all the things that you have going on, their natural attention span is going to start to increase for that period of time. So it may seem very short right now when you're looking at it on the screen, but once you get into it, it's going to be like rolling a boulder downhill when you keep your activities and things you do in circle time to these lengths. It's going to be much easier for you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in circle time if you keep it very short and sweet, as opposed to keeping it longer. And then you're going to start rolling that boulder uphill. And then we all know what happens, right? That boulder's going to roll back onto you. It's not going to be any fun. And then you're going to start playing whack-a-mole again. So onto the good stuff. So have you ever read a book aloud to your kids during circle time that didn't hold their interest? I can certainly attest to that many times over the years. If your kids are wiggly, they're inattentive, or they're asking when it's time for recess or lunch, then it might be time to up your read aloud game. So one of the ways that you can do that is to look for books that are going to increase their participation. And when we increase their participation, then we're going to get more of a buy-in from the kids, right? This one is called, the pages are stuck together. This one's called Press Here by Hervé Toulet, and it invites the children into the story. It invites them to interact with things that appear on the page. And so this one's all about dots on the page, and it says, press here and turn the page. So we press here and turn the page. What will happen? Great. Now press the yellow dot again. Which yellow dot? We better press them both. What's going to happen? Perfect. Rub the dot on the left. Oh, you can work in a little bit of spatial relationship here. Let's rub the dot on the left. Gently. Oh, that's always good, right? So as you can see, we're going through the book and we're interacting with what's inside. Is this teaching them anything? What are they learning through this? Well, it could be colors, it could be anything, but mostly we're using the book as a hook, right? To get their buy-in for circle time. So not every book you read has to have a skill or a concept attached to it. The concept could actually be how to pay attention to a book during circle time. That's a really important concept that we want our kids to learn, right? Much more so than the color red or blue, because that can all come later once you've got their attention. Another one of my favorites is Plant the Tiny Seed by Christy Matheson. This one is loved, loved, loved by young children. I've used this very successfully with 3s, 4s, and 5s. And there's my notes. In fact, that's how much we love it. Wiggle your fingers and add some water. So they're using their hands to kind of tell the story with you. And it invites participation like that all through the book. This one says, clap to bring the sun out again. You wouldn't even believe how excited they are to clap their hands. And then I ask them, and what's going to happen? They're like, the sun's going to come on. Find the worm and look for its tail. I usually say here, oh, feel the sun on your face. Doesn't it feel good? Things like that. They love this book. This one actually is a very participatory book, an interactive read aloud, if you will. But it does also teach things. It's about the life cycle of a plant and the needs of a plant. And so books like that, there's a whole book list, and in the handout, I've listed them for you. There's a link to where you can get that list. So if you're looking for these types of interactive read alouds that can really hook your kids in and get them engaged, then you're going to want to grab the handout so that you can find that list. These types of books are also especially helpful for your dual language learners, students with special needs, or students who may not have had a lot of reading experiences in the home, right? They're not used to being read aloud to, therefore they need these type of hooks to hook them in. Oh, here's one of my very favorites. This is from my good friend Jody at growingbookbybook.com. She has a fabulous website about all things books, of course. And she shared this at last year's Sword of Success Summit. I loved it so much. I'm just going to share a little bit of it with you. But book mail. If you've ever done this, let us know in the comments. It is so fun. It is a great way to get your students really interested in the book you're going to read aloud. And so what Jody does is she takes one of these plain old boring manila envelopes, right? She puts the book in there. Now, if you have a book that won't fit inside, you got to get creative or just do it with a smaller book. But it fits inside the manila envelope, and then she pretends it's being delivered to the classroom. Now, you could do this a lot of fun ways. You could have somebody in your building be in on this, and they're the ones who come and deliver it to your classroom, like knock on the door at a certain time. That involves a lot of prep work. You could also, pull it out of your bag in the morning. You could have a mailbox in the classroom if you want to really go for it and go, pull out all the stops. But she brings the envelope out. She asks the children what they think the book will be about that's inside. And I think, once you've done it a few times, they kind of know that there's a book in this envelope. Is this something you do for every book you read aloud? No way. That's way too much. That's over the top. It will lose its novelty, right? This is when you want to introduce a book that's going to be like really important. For example, if I was going to do a whole week of reading Goldilocks and the Three Bears, I love to do fairy tales for an entire week. I would have the envelope on the first day, right? If I was going to do a nursery rhyme for a whole week, which is another thing I like to do, I would have my favorite nursery rhyme story be delivered in this way. Mrs. Wishy-Washy's farm, that's another one I would do. Things like that, things that are your like cornerstone books that are super important. You could do it with that. But this is a great, great, great idea from Jody at Growing Book by Book. She even takes it a few steps further and does some more fun stuff. Go over there and see if you can find some of her book mail ideas. She has like little stamps that you can put on the envelopes that go with the theme. Really cool stuff. Check it out. And then I have these trusty things here. So here's the deal. You ever read a book aloud to your students, but all they want to do is talk? Me too, right? So how do you get them to understand that there are some times in the book when they can talk, and there's other times, when they can talk, and there's other times when they can listen, right? It'd be helpful if I looked at the pictures on the stick before I showed them on the screen. But these types of things can really, really help. I even have a good friend that I used to teach with. Her name is Marcy, and she bought a set of fake ears from Halloween, like just great big ears. And she actually wears one to show her students when it's time to listen. It's hilarious. I'm not going to go that far. I'm all about fun. If that's your cup of tea, go for it. Search Amazon for giant Halloween ear. But anyway, you can teach your kids that there are certain times when it's time to listen and certain times when it's time to talk. And so you can have this stick and remind them as a visual, okay, I'm going to read the story now. And you don't want them to be like silent for the whole read aloud, but there are certain parts, like you're going to need to get through the book at some point. You could sit there and listen to stories about their kitty cat or their puppy dog all day long, but at some time, be realistic. At some point, you've got to read the story. So you can use this, especially in the beginning of the year when they're still kind of they don't have this kind of circle time thing figured out yet. You're trying to establish this is a listening time. Then you can use these little sticks. I just printed out some clip art that I found online of an ear and a mouth. So if you Google clip art ear, clip art mouth, you'll find something like this. All right, you heard me talk about Mrs. Wishy-Washy's farm. I got a little ahead of myself there. It can take a lot of trial and error to find those just right types of books that are really going to engage your kids. And often it takes several years, many years of reading all sorts of picture books to like gather your favorites that always work for your students, books that you've kind of perfected your recipe of reading aloud. And, it can be really difficult to find the time to do that. Let's be honest, right? You've got to search for the books, you've got to preview them, you've got to read them aloud, you've got to try out the voices, you got to work on your expressions. It's a lot of work. There's no question about that. So I've done all the hard work for you. One of the things when I first started Pre-K Pages back in 2001-ish, one of the things people asked me all the time were what were my favorite read alouds for certain subjects or themes. And so I started putting these together way back then. I have updated them all, don't worry, since then many times, and I'm continually updating them every year. But these are what I like to call age appropriate and teacher approved. So you can find more than 40. I think it's really closer to 50 these days, but I haven't counted recently, so I'm just playing it safe and say 40 book lists over there. And also these are linked in your handout. So if you want to know what the best books for farm, for children who are ages 3, 4, and 5, and go there. We've got books for ocean, I don't know, anything and everything, fairy tales, nursery rhymes, you name it. And if you think of a book list that I don't have, let me know in the comments here, and I'll be happy to put it on the list of future book lists. Sometimes I have book lists for my book lists, but it will save you tons of time. Now, you don't have to buy all of these books. You certainly can if you want to, if you have an unlimited budget. But mostly what people like to do with these book lists is to, now that everything is digital, right? Everything for libraries is digital. You can actually go online and reserve some of these books from your local library, order them in advance, and all you have to do is swing by and pick them up. So that's one way a lot of teachers use these lists, because I can go to the library on Saturday to get books for my class for the next week, but I usually end up spending 3 or 4 hours because I love the library, and I end up coming out with not very many books because guess what? Every other teacher is also looking for books for a farm theme in the spring, right? So the early bird catches the worm, go online and reserve those. Now let's talk about being a responsive teacher. Everybody says it's important to be responsive to your students' needs, right? But what does that mean really? Like, what does that really mean? It drives me nuts when I hear people say that. It means to be aware of your students' actions or behavior. These things are telling you something. They're telling you that your kids need something different from you, right? So if their actions or behavior are telling you that they're wiggly or they're talking too much, they're telling you that they need something different from you, right? So you respond to those needs, right, by adjusting what you're doing. That's what being responsive means, okay? So for example, they're too chatty, right? Being responsive might look like singing a song or providing opportunities for them to talk and share appropriately, right? I find that a lot of times my kids are really chatty in the past on Mondays because they've had a whole weekend, and sometimes exciting things happen over the weekend. There was a wedding, or there was, you know, something big that happened, the state fair, whatever it might be. So giving them a little extra time when we notice these things. If they're extra wiggly, being responsive might look like providing a movement activity or a movement song where they can use their whole body, right? I'm thinking things like head, shoulders, knees, and toes, tootie ta, another shout out to Dr. Jean, all kinds of movement songs out there. Being responsive might also look like offering like a balance or a sensory cushion to help students focus. I know that these can be rather pricey if you don't have a budget for them, especially in today's day and age. Everything seems to have gone up and skyrocketed in price recently, but you can consider writing a donors choose grant for a set of these. And I'm also not a fan of like ordering one for every single kid in the class, because these are tools, right, that kids can use to help them focus and pay attention. Not every kid is going to need them. They should be tools that you use or your kids can use whenever necessary. So I don't think you need a whole class set. Also, they're not super tiny. They are rather thick. And if you want to store 22 or more of them, depending on where you work, you're going to need a place to put them. So I don't think you need an entire class set of 22 or more, but I think having a nice selection of them is going to be really helpful for those extra wiggly kids who need that. Another thing that being responsive might look like, you know, it could be channeling, like we talked about, your kids' eagerness, shall we say, to talk. So it doesn't mean that circle time has to be a free-for-all, right? We're not saying that at all. It's not about kids talking over you or each other. It's also not about listening to every single kid in the classroom tell you a personal story about that puppy or kitty dog or their friend's puppy or kitty cat, sorry. And all their friends rolling around the carpet, you know, chewing on their shoelaces because they're having to listen to some extended 4-year-old story, and we know those go on forever and have no end. But you can be responsive when this happens to keep your kids on track. And one way you can do this is whenever a child just has to tell you something, you know, something exciting happened, or I went to Walmart could be super exciting to a little kid, you never know. Invite them to put the story in an imaginary envelope. So the way this worked in my classroom was, and I'm not saying to dismiss kids or anything like that, but I'm just saying if this is becoming a repeat problem and you're trying to read a story or you need to move on with the lesson because you don't want to keep them too long, you can invite them to put their stories in an imaginary envelope. And the way it works is I tell them, let's say someone's talking about a puppy, as they do. That sounds like a fantastic story for you to write about during writing time. Let's take that story out of your head, get it out, unlock your head, get the idea out, put it in your imaginary envelope, seal the envelope. We pretend we lick it, close it up, put it in your pocket. Now, there are times when kids don't have pockets. So, because I ran across that real quick when I started doing this. So I say, oh, you know what? You can put your imaginary envelope in and then designate a place. I usually would tell them in that case in your backpack, because we had our backpacks in the classroom on hooks. It might not work for you that way, but think of another place they can put it if they don't have any pockets. And so it's imaginary, right? So you can get creative. So put it up, put it in that imaginary envelope and get it out again at writing time. And then I just made a little habit out of saying, if anybody has any envelopes they need to use for writing time today, get them out now. And it would just be hilarious to see all these little 4-year-olds take out their imaginary envelopes, unseal them, lift out the idea, put it back in their head, and then they had a topic to write about that day. So it worked really well for me. And I hope you can use it too. All right, so another way of being responsive is knowing when to, as Elsa says, let it go, right? And move on to the next activity. Don't consider moving on a failure. Consider it an opportunity to reflect, regroup, and refine, okay? Ask yourself, what can I do differently next time? And also, don't forget that being responsive can go in the opposite direction. So there was one time early in my career, I was reading the be-all, end-all of read-alouds, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, to my class of 3-year-olds. And I had props, I had like a sock, and I had a bag, a paper bag, and I was doing the whole thing, right? This is a big deal in the 3-year-old world. And the nurse was there. I worked at Head Start at the time, and so the nurse is kind of like the second in command at Head Start, because she does all the lice checks and the health checks and the scales and all that stuff. Anyway, she knocked on the door and she said, I'm here to do a lice check. And I said, well, we're not quite done reading the story. If you could wait, that'd be great. So I continued on with my all-out, Very Hungry Caterpillar lesson, and the kids were extremely engaged. They really wanted to see what happened to this caterpillar once he went into the paper bag. Well, long story short, nurse didn't like that, and she reported me to my boss for taking too long at circle time, because at that time it was mandatory that you could not do more than 2 to 3 minutes per year of age, and these kids were only 3. So this circle time ended up being, like 12 to 15 minutes, because they were engaged. So it's not so much about cutting things off at a certain minute, but more about, are they engaged, right? So if they are engaged, then being responsive could mean going on with the lesson, which is what I chose to do and ended up getting in trouble for. But if you're a professional educator, you know how to advocate for your kids, and so nothing bad happened to me. But anyway, food for thought. And there's a quote on the screen for you there, attributed to Oprah, but the internet these days, you never know who really said these things, but that's what the internet said. So and now novelty. So do you remember how the brain, we talked about the brain craves routine, right? It seeks patterns and it craves routine. The brain also seeks novelty, right? Because novelty makes us happy, okay? The inability, or the ability rather, I should say, the ability to create new connections between those neurons in our brain is increased by the influence of novelty, right? This increases the brain's potential for learning new concepts and facts. Novelty has been shown to improve the memory of test subjects. And research has shown that a rush of dopamine follows a fresh experience or novelty. And in turn, the brain reacts to novelty by releasing dopamine, which motivates us to want more, right? So the bottom line is this, right? All that researchy stuff to say, novelty can improve memory, our capacity for learning, and increase our motivation and attention. So on one hand, we need to provide lots of consistency and routine in our daily activities, right, in our circle time, but we also need to add novelty, right? And that's where it can get a little tricky, because too much novelty, overstimulating, right? Too much routine and not enough novelty, not so good either. It's a balancing act, right? And professional educators know how to have to know how to balance the two. So how do you do that? All right, so some ways to provide your students with novelty are to use props, okay? So everybody knows that little kids like to touch and feel things, and props are things your students can touch and hold in their hands, right? And adding props to your circle time is going to entice your kids to participate and capture their attention. And this is just a very silly, quick and easy paper plate mask that I made to go along with the song about 5 little kittens. And we just painted the plates, I cut out the eyes, I taped on some pipe cleaners because apparently pipe cleaners don't stick very well to painted paper plates. I glued on a pom-pom nose, and now my kids have these really cool, inexpensive face masks, right, that they can use when we sing a song about, or a finger play about 5 little kittens, right? Other things that you might use, things like scarves and bean bags. These things are not old-fashioned. These things actually have research-based purposes for use in the classroom, right? They're going to add that novelty, and you wouldn't use a kitty cat mask every single day, just like you wouldn't use the scarves or a bean bag every single day, but they provide that novelty. Another great way to use props is to use pictures, right? We all know that young children, they like to see pictures of things because they can't read, right? So having pictures is going to be super helpful for drawing in their attention. Now, the ones I'm holding in my hand here are not in order by number because that would have taken me too long, but you can see that there's 5 monkeys. Now, we all know the song of the 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. And so that's all fine and good. And we want all the kids to be using their hands and doing 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed, right? And I usually do it with one arm like this. But what if you had the other students, like 5 other students, each one holding a monkey standing in front of the class in order, and the class was helping you line them up, right? So you're getting numeral identification, you're getting interactive because you have kids coming up to the front, the kids in the audience are helping organize them. There's always somebody in the audience or in your class rather, who knows how to identify numerals and what order they go in so they can help you. I like to kind of let them lead that. It's very, very powerful for them. And then as you sing the song, let's pretend, okay, this is number 3. So I would go behind the child who was holding the stick with the number 3 monkey on it, and I would stand directly behind that child. And when it was their turn, like when we got to the 3rd little monkey, right, he fell off and bumped his head, or she fell off and bumped her head, they come and stand forward and they kind of act it out. So, so, so fun for little kids. They love it. Do we do this every single day? No, not really, but we do a lot of these types of things in the beginning of the year when we're trying to stretch their little attention spans, right? Make it super fun. And there's things they're learning through this aside from the great benefits of oral language development, right? The rhythm, the rhyme, and the repetition that they're getting from hearing that, super, super helpful. There's also wheels on the bus. The reason I brought these particular props out is because in your handout, I have these and the others on the screen, in addition to one more, available in your handout for free. So all you have to do is cut them out and tape them on craft sticks, and you can laminate them for durability too. But I've got all 9 aspects of the wheels on the bus, 5 little monkeys, and there's also 5 little pumpkins. And there's a school-friendly version of that one as well for you in your handout. Okay, next up, some of my favorites. Another way to provide novelty, chip clips. Have you ever heard of chip clips? So these are apparently supposed to be used to secure the top of bags of chips. Who knew? I've always used a clothespin personally in my house, and I have some boring ones that are just colors, right? But they also make them in all these really fun, cute little animals and different things, and you can find them. You can get them on Amazon. They're usually more expensive, but usually dollar stores and craft stores, sometimes Bed Bath & Beyond or the at-home store, Home Goods will carry these types of chip clips, these really cute little chip clips. And you put them on a ruler, or this is a paint stick, right? And I created this little song, and we sing this. This is like a finger play, right? Or a rhyme or a chant, whatever you want to call it. And let's say we're reading about or learning about cats or pets, whatever the topic or theme may be. And then we can sing the little song and move the little chip clips. This is something I would do in my circle time. I would be holding the paint stick, and I would be manipulating the chip clips, right, as we sang the song. And this is the 5 little, you can pretty much do anything using that tune of 5 little from 5 Little Pumpkins. So this is 5 little kittens laying in the sun. The first one said, "I'm ready for some fun." The second one said, "I want to climb a tree." And the third one said, "Follow me." And I try to make little movements as I do this so that the kids that are sitting in front of me can make the movements too. The fourth one said, "I want a treat." And the fifth one said, "Pat your tummy, I'm ready to eat." Then the mommy cat meowed, "I have some tasty fish." And the 5 little kittens frolicked to their dish. Super simple and easy. And the little orange pom-poms on the screen, I think I forgot to bring those up here with me, but those can serve as, I don't know what the right term is, but fidgets for your kids, right? So some of the cats in this song are orange. So I found orange pom-poms. As an early childhood teacher, you probably have oodles of pom-poms. I picked out the orange ones and I put them in a bag, and I let each kid hold one of those orange pom-poms while we read the story in circle time. And hey, they're pom-poms. I don't really care if they're rough on them, right? They're pom-poms. And it gives them something to hold in their hand. Some people call them story trinkets. I think I've heard them called that before. I think of them as story fidgets. And it's up to you whether they keep them at the end or not. But those are all some great ways that you can add this novelty to your circle time, right? So next up are tools. And tools are things the teacher uses to invite student participation and pique their interest. And my number one, well, I shouldn't say number one, they're all number one, but one of my favorites, let's put it that way, is the flannel board story. So a lot of teachers think flannel boards are old school, but let me tell you, some things that are old are just old, right? And we got new evidence-based, research-backed best practices. But some of the things that are old are actually still evidence-based, research-based. And one of those is flannel board stories. So they're going to support oral language development and retelling, in addition to oodles of others. So I just like to use a flannel board sometimes to tell a story. A lot of the flannel boards I use go along with fairy tales or nursery rhymes or finger plays, because these are things we read over and over again and we go in depth on. So this is obviously the Itsy Bitsy Spider or the Eensy Weensy Spider, depending on where you're located. And we love to sing that song. We can do it with our hands. We can do it in a lot of different ways. But a flannel board is another way to do that. And it's going to help support the development of those retelling and oral language skills. And I like to have the kids, once I do it for them in the whole, you know, circle time area, then I invite them up to hold the pieces and put them on for me as we sing. And that sounds like something super easy, because really there's only two pieces to this. The background is the house, and then there's a sun and a spider, and then there's also like a raindrop and a cloud somewhere in there. So not a lot of kids can participate, and it's a very short rhyme. That's okay. Do it again. Give some other kids a try or a turn. And then eventually, once they're really familiar with how these felt boards or flannel stories go, I might put them in a storytelling center. So tools can be used in your circle time, but the purpose isn't for creating a center. This really is a tool to increase attention, focus, and listening for your kids. Mystery bag. Here's my mystery bag. This is some kind of a shiny, soft, satiny drawstring bag that I got when I ordered something from Amazon. And it's perfect for a mystery bag. So one of the things you can do, you can bring this bag out before you bring out the story. You could combine it with that mail idea from Jody at Growing Book by Book. But one of the things you can do with this is you can invite students to come up, one student at a time, put their hand in, feel around without looking. Anytime we require them to cover their eyes during circle time, that's gold. Circle time gold, right? They think it's the best thing ever. They pay attention. They're, ooh, it must be so good that I can't even look. So they put their hand in without looking, and they can tell you what they feel. What do you feel? Oh, what is that? Is it round? Is it square? Is it hard? Is it soft? It's hard and it's round. Let's see. What is it? It's a ball, and when you shake it, there's a bell inside. Oh, I wonder what that means. Our story is about a ball. What do you think? Now, at this point, some smarty might already be saying, oh, it's a ball for a cat. Ooh, do you think our story's about a cat? Let's keep looking. Let's find some more clues. And then you do that again and you pull it out. Oh, look, it's this can. And there's a picture of a cat on the front. Look at that. And the words say, fancy feast. I wonder what that says about our story. That's another cat clue, isn't it? And you go on like that. There's a bowl in there. Just a few things that you can either find easily and quickly, either around your house or in the classroom. And the last thing I pulled out, I got this little set of wooden pets at the Target dollar section, and there's a cat. And, oh, I think this story might be about a cat. Then you can pull out your book. It is just so fun. The kids are so engaged. Everybody wants a turn to put their hand in the bag and pull things out and guess what the story is. Super fun. Another tool that you can use is, sorry, I have a lot of other props there. A puppet, right? So you can get any puppet, doesn't have to be this one. Any old puppet will do. But when you use a puppet, puppets are almost like circle time magic, right? So I like to use this puppet. His or her name is Allie. And students, young children, they still have this sense of make-believe, right? They still believe, a lot of them believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and all that stuff. That's because they're young children, and that's how young children are, right? So for example, I tutor students in my spare time when I'm not here on screen with you and working with our students in the Teaching Trailblazers mentorship program or blogging or whatever. I also have some tutoring students that I see, and I have this one little guy who thinks that Allie is the teacher of the class and I am Allie's assistant. That is his belief. He firmly believes that. And when he gets out of the car to come to tutoring with me, he says, "Where's Allie?" Every time he would say it. So I started bringing Allie with me to open the car door. And he talks to Allie all the time. Now, this is a child who doesn't talk a whole lot. So he thinks it's real. He talks to it. He plays with it. It is such a motivator for him to talk, but you can use it in circle time too. And one of the ways I use it in circle time is like when I'm getting ready to read the story. Oh, sometimes Allie will bring the book out, hold it in his mouth, right? And then I'll say, oh, Allie has a book for us to read. What's that, Allie? What did you say? Oh, it's hard for me to hear him because you all are talking. I couldn't hear you. It's still too loud. Oh, okay. Just by saying those few words, the kids are all like shushing each other because everyone wants to hear what Allie has to say. You don't need to be a ventriloquist. I do this. That little boy that I was talking about, he sees my mouth move. He's not looking at my mouth, he's looking at the alligator's mouth. And Allie might say, I need everybody to be looking at the book so we can start, whatever it might be. But Allie whispers in my ear all the time and then talks to the children. This is a great tool. Super fun. Any puppet will do, even those really cheap puppets from IKEA or wherever you get your puppets. Sometimes they have them at Dollar Tree. Those don't always fit on my hand. But find you a nice, inexpensive puppet and you can thank me later because they really are magic to children. Microphones, I brought two here. Never underestimate the value of a cheap microphone. I use these all the time in circle time. You can use them to amplify your own voice. This cheap one has no mechanical ability whatsoever. Sometimes when you talk right into it, it makes a little bit of an echo, but really it's just a prop, right? It's just a tool. And so I use these all the time to entice children to engage with me and engage with the story. Jason, did you notice something about Mrs. Wishy-Washy's farm that you wanted to share with us? Here, tell us into the microphone. It's just something that they can, this one's broken. Interesting. It's something that they can hold. Everyone wants a turn with it, so you can get more participation and engagement. Everyone is really interested in looking at their friend holding a microphone rather than me just yakety yak, 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 right? And if you really want to step up your game, I found this one. And I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to get it to work on camera or not. I'm going to guess not because I'm not super savvy. But yeah, I've already forgotten how to turn it on. But this one, when you press this little button in the middle, it changes your voice. Like you can do a super squeaky high, like helium voice, and you can do a great big Papa Bear voice. This one is super cool. I love it. It was like 20 bucks on Amazon. I'm sure there's a link to it somewhere, but I have already forgotten how to turn it on, only because I'm on camera. Anyway, super fun tool. All right, now let's talk about transitions for a minute. I truly believe that transitions are like bridges, right? Bridges in the classroom that connect one activity to the next. So how your students transition to and from circle time is just as important as circle time itself. I know, crazy, right? When you establish these clear and consistent transitions, you're setting yourself and your students up for circle time success. So my best tips for transitioning to and from circle time. Tip number one, always use that picture schedule when you're transitioning, right? So you're always going to refer to your picture schedule when it's time to go either to circle time or from circle to the next thing, right? So you're going to want to have it in your circle time area. You're going to want to have it at their eye level. It's not way up there. It's not way over there across the room. It's right here. And then make sure you use some kind of signal or a song when you're transitioning to and from. So I just use that simple na 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 na. There's no searching for a song on my phone or anything like that. Just quick and easy because my eyes are on them, right? And the minute I put my eyes on my phone, I've lost half of them because they're quick like that, right? Tip number two, be sure they know exactly where to go when it's time to start the next thing. So let's say you're coming to circle time. That's pretty easy. They know where to go because you've got a nice designated area, often a carpet, a large group area. But when they go from circle to the next thing, make sure they know where they're going, right? So if it's time to go to recess, let's say, then you're going to want to let them know that it's time to line up, because for some kids, recess might just mean time to run around. So they start running around the room, right? Where do they go? Like, how does this transition work? So that's what I would do next. And then number 3, use your picture schedule, obviously, to signal the end of circle time and transition to the next one. I kind of said that. And you can also select students to transition in really fun, intentional ways, like, you know, the first letter of their name, the type of shirt, their color of the shirt they're wearing, the types of shoes they're wearing, length of their hair, anything like that. Some creative ways. Oh, and I lied, tip number 5. Be sure they know exactly where to go when they leave this circle, right? So they need to know if it's center time, do they just like pell-mell run all over free for all? Or do you have like a system where they go and select their centers or check a chart or whatever? Like, make sure the process is in place. So transitions are like the bridges, right, that connect one activity to the next. If your bridge is weak, what will happen? Think of it like that. Next up is music. Okay, now circle time, this is my own philosophy. Circle time without music and movement really isn't circle time at all. So it doesn't matter if you can sing, because circle time is not about you. Circle time is about the children, right? So tons and tons and tons, oodles of research out there to support lots and lots of music and movement in the classroom, but I'll highlight one for you. So neuroscientist, musician, and TEDx speaker Alan Harvey says, music has a positive impact on social and cognitive development of children, and these effects are long-lasting. There's better hearing, motor skills, memory, verbal, and literacy skills. So lots and lots of benefits. I like to think of music as a powerhouse in the classroom because you can accomplish so much with it. Music helps stretch their little attention spans. It helps get their attention. It helps them stay focused. So many things. And of course, you can teach tons of skills and concepts, oral language development, vocabulary, all of these things can be supported through music. And we all know, I think we can all agree, that children aren't built for sitting still. They're built to move, right? So you're going to want to sing songs that incorporate movement. So when you can incorporate that music with movement, that's the sweet spot, right? So some ideas, just very basic off the top of my head. None of these are earth-shattering, but shake your sillies out, a hokey pokey, the tootie ta. These are all timeless classics for a reason. They are perfect for offering music and movement to young children. And they have to listen very carefully to all 3 of these, right? You got to know when to put your arm in and your arm out, put your arm in and shake it all about. You have to listen for these things. You have to listen in tootie ta, right? You have to know which part of your body to shake and shake your sillies out. You need a large variety of these songs, right? To provide that novelty. You don't want to get overuse of one of them, right? And don't worry, again, I've done all the hard work for you. And so I have a lot of songs that you can use in your classroom. I've collected them all and put them into song lists by theme and topic and so forth, linked in your handout as well. All right, so here's the deal. This one is credited to Mark Twain, but again, I don't know. Is it really? Not sure. If it is, great. The internet was right for once. But the quote is, sing like nobody's listening, dance like nobody's watching. So I encourage you to think about what is fun in the classroom, right? How do you make something fun? That's where we're on now. We're on fun. How do you make something fun? I've been asked this by a number of folks. How do you make it fun? Because what we think of as fun as adults, like I think reading books is fun. Little kids, not so much. They'd rather be playing with blocks in the dramatic play center, running around at the park. That's the idea of fun to them. So how do you do that? How do you make something fun, right? And again, I think it goes back to this quote. You pretend nobody's listening and nobody's watching, because the people that are watching you in the classroom are the children, right? So for young children, fun means play. So we're going to sing often, and we're going to sing with enthusiasm, or we're going to sing with exaggerated motions and all kinds of things that as adults we might find silly, but little kids need that. We're going to use finger plays like 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. We're going to include whole body movements in songs and finger plays whenever possible. We're going to use that puppet, right? We're going to use that class puppet. We're going to read with expression. Who's been sitting in my chair? We're going to play games. So having a successful circle time requires skill. I like to think of it as one part theater, right? Part of it is being theatric, the other part is being musical. There's so many things that go into having a successful circle time. And another thing is for games. Games are a great way to teach self-regulation skills, like waiting for a turn, right? And you can also teach academic concepts through games. These fun and playful games are going to add that novelty that kids are looking for. So you don't play the same game all the time. You're going to switch it up. And then once you've got a repertoire of these games, it's perfectly appropriate to let the kids pick the game that you're going to play that day. So some of my favorites, these are just a few off the top of my head that I've played over the years in my classroom, but hot potato, if you've never played that one, you know, the kids pass something around while music plays, and then when the music stops, there's a lot of different ways to play it. I like to have like a bucket of something and they pull something out and either talk about it or identify it or something like that. That's kind of like the academic portion of it for me. But a lot of times people just do the you're out if you're caught holding it when the music stops playing. I don't like that version so much because with little kids, you're out kind of means like you're bad or you're done or, you know, you can't keep participating. And we don't ever want like a whole group of kids standing off to the side with nothing to do because that's how you spell trouble. But another one, doggy, doggy, where's your bone, right? Doggy, doggy, where's your bone? Somebody stole it from your home. Guess who? Maybe you, maybe monkeys from the zoo. There's lots of different ways to say a lot of these because these are like oral traditions. Like there is no like one right way to do doggy, doggy, where's your bone? You'll find 50 different variations out there on the internet. Who stole the cookie is the ultimate classic. You know, who stole the cookies from the cookie jar? Jason stole the cookies from the cookie jar. Who, me? Yes, you. Couldn't be, then who? You know, and then you go around the circle and you do that. And super fun because you're getting the kids a lot of times in this doggy, doggy, where's your bone? And who stole the cookie? They're covering their eyes. You guys, when kids cover their eyes, it's like a recipe for getting them to pay attention and look. Well, they're always going to be looking with their hands like that, right? That's just their nature. And one thing I've done, if that's a problem for you, is to turn them around. Everyone turn around and face the other way. That's a great way to get them moving too. Little simple games like this that seem like, who has time for those kind of things these days? This is exactly what kids need, right? It's nothing that should get pushed out of what we do in the day for lack of time. This is exactly what they need to stretch those attention spans and make things fun and playful. Another one is four corners, and there's lots of ways to make that academic, right? I've done it with nursery rhymes. Like if you have a character from Jack and Jill or something that's related to Jack and Jill, you know, you go stand in the Jack and Jill corner, things like that. It's super fun. It's not a punitive game, I promise, but look that one up as well. These are all games I played in my classroom over the years that my students just loved. Another one are these alphabet, and I also have number games. So the way these are played is you put all of the either letters or numbers, depending on whatever it is you're learning about or focusing on in your classroom. This one just happens to be a cat theme because that's kind of all the props that I brought with me today. They're all kind of focused on a cat theme. And each one has a letter on it. And then there's one card. I actually have 8 in each of these sets, but it's It's up to you how many you hide, but you hide one behind a letter on the chart, right? This is a pocket chart. So you can have them all turn around or cover their eyes. You hide, in this case, it's a mouse behind one of the cats. And then they have to, the kids, once they turn around, have to start guessing. And so you're gonna wanna have a little bit of order there, how they tell you they wanna turn to guess. And they might say something like, I think he's behind the J. Now, if your kids can't identify letters yet, they can come up and point, and you can say, oh, you think it's behind the J? You think the mouse is behind the J? And you might, point to it, call their attention to it. And then you can have that child pull the card out and see if the mouse is hiding behind there. And super, super fun. It's like a hide and seek type of a game. And there's a little chant that goes with it. It says, kitty cat, hide and seek. Where's the mouse? Let me peek. And so every time we give a child a turn, we say the chant, right? So this is where your assessment data comes in. Aha, right? Aha. How do you know which letters to hide something behind, right? How do you know which letter to hide the mouse behind? This is where you can take your assessment data that you've gathered and look at it really quickly, because with ESGI, you can make those really super easy charts and graphs and all kinds of things. And you can just look at it and go, okay, well, I know that at least 5 of my kids don't know the letter G, right? So I'm gonna make sure I do G today. And then I also have a couple of students who still don't know the letter Y, and I'm gonna make sure I hide it behind the Y. Now, you're not gonna be able to play this game so that you hide it behind every single letter of the alphabet. That would be 26 times too long, right? You're just gonna do it a couple of times, and you can extend it over, like if you're learning about pets for an entire week or 2 weeks, you could extend it over that time frame and maybe only do it every now and then during that time. You don't wanna overdo something, then the novelty wears off, right? So games like this hide and seek games where you hide something behind something else. And ESGI is the assessment tool that I like to use because it makes generating those reports and charts like we were talking about, makes them super easy with just a one click. But don't take my word for it. So you can try it out for yourself. Just use my special promo code, PREKPAGES, that's pre-K pages, all one word rather, to get your free 60-day trial, no credit card required. So, and there's a QR code on the screen there, so you can actually, if you're not already on your device, you can point your device at the screen and be taken directly to that page. All right, so now it's time for Q&A. So I know some of the questions some of you out there are asking. What if, here's a good one. What if my school or my admin, depending on where you are, requires certain time to be the same length or a specific length for every teacher? Not ideal, but you can work with it. So what you're going to do is balance the time that you're supposed to be using, balance active and passive. That's going to be the secret to your success there. Balance the active and the passive, right? So let's say your admin says everybody in the whole building must do circle time for 20 minutes. I don't know. And you're like, that's too long for my kids. They're too little. Circle time is what you make it, right? So you might have a full-blown music and movement time within that 20 minutes that you can call part of your circle time. You might have 5 minutes of games or activities or something like that. It doesn't have to just be a sit and get type of 20 minutes. So I get that. What about, here's another good one. What about the color, number, shape, or letter of the week? When do we do that during circle time? Here's the thing, okay? Bear with me. That is so 1990, right? There are some things in education that are old, but yet still supported by research. And then there are other things that are old and they're just old and they're no longer supported by research and evidence-based practices. So color, letter, number, and shape of the week, or whatever you call those, there's lots of research to support no longer doing that, because we want to teach things in context as they become meaningful to children. And when we isolate skills into this context of letter of the day, or letter or number of the week, or shape of the week, or color of the day, whatever it is, we're removing them from their natural context. And so it really is just not the best use of children's time. And I really think that that old saying, when we know better, we do better, which is also sometimes attributed to Oprah Winfrey, but again, who knows, that comes into play there. What if, I like all these what if questions, right? What if my admin says I have to have a focus wall? Ooh, the big bad focus wall. Anything you put on your walls above the children's eye level, we all know that that just becomes clutter, right? Or decor, really. They're not looking at it. So if your admin says you have to have something on your wall because some program somewhere that they bought says that you must, then put it up there above children's eye level and never refer to it again. I mean, honestly, because your job isn't to do inappropriate things in your classroom to prepare students for something inappropriate in the next grade level. Like, that's just not your job, I don't think. So give it the attention that it deserves and put it there on the wall. What about the calendar? You didn't talk about the calendar at all, Vanessa. I can just hear some of you. That's absolutely right. I did not, and I did not for a reason. You can go over to my podcast, Elevating Early Childhood, and hear all about the conversations we've been having about calendar time over there. So just search for Elevating Early Childhood in your favorite podcast app, and you can listen to all of my thoughts, ideas, and all of our listeners' questions that I've answered for you over there. But yeah. All right, so that brings me to the questions. I want you to be thinking about these 3 things as you prepare to leave this session. I want you to think about what your ideal circle time would look like. That's number 1. Number 2, what would it sound like? What would your ideal circle time sound like? And hopefully you won't say like you could hear a pin drop, because that's not what this session was about at all. And then number 3 is, what will you do to make it happen? What will you do in order to make or create your ideal circle time? So here is your action plan. So we talked about your read aloud, right? What kind of books you should read, how you should read them, selecting books, introducing books, all of that good stuff. So think about that. How to be a responsive teacher, right? Because this whole circle time thing is a balancing act. The props and tools you're going to use, think about those. Think about adding some of those props and tools if you don't already have them. And they don't always have to break the bank either. You can make a paper bag puppet. I made a Pete the Cat paper bag puppet once that was more popular than the stuffed one that I ended up buying off Amazon. Think about your transitions, because you can lose a lot of time in the classroom when your transitions aren't really strong. Think about your transitions. Make it fun. Play, 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 play. Make it fun with music and games. Think about the music that you're using. Beanbags and scarves are not old school. There is a reason for those. There are powerhouses in the classroom when it comes to music and movement. You're going to get lots of full body movements, creative expression, all of these things. Those are some of the things we don't throw out in 2022 from our classrooms. These are things we want to go back to if we've gotten away from them. So those things there are things that I want you to think about when you're creating your ideal circle time in your mind, or on paper if you prefer. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this session. I encourage you to go and download the handout that goes along with this session. It's basically everything that I just said crammed into like a 20-page document, along with those free printable props that you can put on craft sticks or popsicle sticks wherever you're located. Just go to that link on the screen, or if you're watching on your laptop or desktop, just point your device at the screen and it will take you directly to where you can get it. I'm going to hand it over to Rochelle now. It's been a pleasure talking to you here tonight, and thank you so much to ESGI for providing me the opportunity to do so. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin.